I watched Trump's presser with the president of FIFA today, so you don't have to, and here's my overview. First of all, they spoke for about 36 minutes, and he only mentioned Biden twice, so that's a pretty vast improvement. So right off the bat, he says that they are breaking records for the number of tickets sold, and that in the US, many of the games are already sold out. What he says, you can go on FIFA's site and see that none of the games in the US are sold out, probably because they haven't even determined which teams are playing in which group yet, because not all of the teams have even qualified yet. So it wouldn't make any sense for the games to be sold out. So of course they're not. Also on the FIFA website, you will see that the cheapest ticket price you can find for a game in the US is $1,400 for one game. This is hilarious. He calls it a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, even though in his lifetime there will have been 2 World Cups in the US, with the most recent one being in 1994. He doesn't say it this time, but he said many times in the past that he single-handedly got the FIFA World Cup into the US. Now, I'm just going to remind you that it was a joint bid between the US, Canada, and Mexico, which is why games are being played in the US, Canada, and Mexico. But at one point, he's going to ask all the people around him to say something, and basically he's just looking for a compliment. At least it seems that way, because all of them just come up and say, without your great leadership, we never would have gotten this accomplished. But this is how informed he is about what's going on in FIFA, because, again, he's claiming he single-handedly got it there. He says, where is the 2030 World Cup going to be? I swear to God, I do more research for interviews with jobs where I know even if they offered me the job, I would not accept it than this man does before a press conference. At one point, he says the king of Saudi Arabia is coming tomorrow, and then he changes his mind literally immediately and says that it's in fact the crown prince who's coming tomorrow, not the king. And then later in the news conference, he's asked, are you just going to sell F-35s to Saudi Arabia? And he's like, yeah, why not? I swear to God, at one point, the statistic is brought up that this should bring in $30 billion of revenue into the United States. And he asks, how much does the government get to keep? He's asking how much of that money is going directly into my pocket is what he's asking. There will be some talk about the FIFA Pass. Now, this is the FIFA prioritized appointment scheduling system, and Trump says that it allows people with a World Cup ticket to get an interview. Now, he doesn't explain at all what that means, and it sounds when he describes it like he's saying that they're getting an interview with FIFA for some reason. And then later, the president of FIFA, because he's better able to explain what's happening in the United States than the president of the United States, explains that having the ticket from FIFA will in fact get you prioritized on the list for getting a visa to come in the United States, which makes more sense than whatever Donald Trump tried to explain. And again, the president isn't able to explain the policy of the United States. We in fact need a foreign official who's not affiliated with any country in particular, but just an international oversight sporting group to explain to Donald Trump and the American people, and the people around the world, because they couldn't understand what Donald Trump said, that in fact this is just going to prioritize your interview for getting a visa. As part of this too, Marco Rubio says that they doubled the number of consulate officials in many countries in order to deal with the FIFA World Cup being here. I don't know why that's needed, but it's definitely not saving the Americans money, that's for sure. Kristi Noem will say everyone is welcome in the US, they just better get out as soon as the event is over. I mean, this is Border Patrol Barbie who brags about ripping families apart, saying that everyone is welcome in the US. Now again, because he does less research than I would do for a job interview for a job that I don't want, he asks how many games are going to be in the World Cup. He couldn't just Google it. Right after that, he says Democrats caused the shutdown, but this is going to more than make up for it. And then he says that they're going to have a UFC fight on the front lawn of the White House, and he's going to be watching it from the White House front doors. And that Dana White assured him that this is going to be the best card ever put together for any UFC fight ever. Now, this next one is quite hilarious because through his word association, he may have given us more information on what actually happened in the MRI scans than we've been able to pry out of the press secretary with constant questioning. He gets asked by a reporter, why is your voice so ragged? And he says because there were stupid people who were doing a stupid trade deal that he didn't agree with, so he had to yell at them. And the reporter says, it sounds like there's a follow-up to that. And he goes, what? And the reporter goes, it sounds like there's a follow-up to that. And he says, oh, I thought you said a polyp. Now, if you don't know, a polyp is an abnormal growth of tissue that can form in various parts of the body, such as the colon, uterus, nose, or vocal cords. While many polyps are harmless, some have the potential to become cancerous and are often removed during a medical procedure like a colonoscopy or endoscopy. Yeah, he's got cancer, I'm pretty sure at this point with that word association. Oh yeah, and then a new reporter tries to follow up later and go, hey, who was that country that you were having this trade dispute with where you were yelling at them and calling them stupid people? And she says, the people want to know, the American people want to know. And he says, why the hell would I tell you that? He says that he won't rule out the idea of putting boots on the ground in Venezuela. Why? Because they sent hundreds of thousands of people into our country, I guess, through some state-run program. He also says that he still hasn't gotten out most of the gang members that came in under the crooked Joe Biden administration. And then he says that what Biden did to this country will never be forgotten. Now, he knows about the Chips and Science Act. How do I know this? Because he says within a year or two, we're going to be producing a large portion of computer chips. And then he says that this is not due to the CHIPS Act. The CHIPS Act was a disaster for our country. He then will later say that we had 100% of the chip manufacturing industry, and then we were stupid and let Taiwan take over all of that. And now it's coming back to the US. I'll give you some numbers. In 1990, when we had the largest market share of computer chip production that we ever had, we had 37% of the market share of computer chip production. This number dropped to about 12% in the fiscal year 2021-2022. Due to the Chips and Science Act, this was projected to grow to about 14% of the market share by 2032, which is, of course, what he's trying to reference, but is completely unable to because he doesn't actually know what's in these things. We never held 100% of market share. In fact, we barely at one point, at the highest point, were over a third of market share. So all of this is obviously just unfathomably untrue. And he, of course, claims that due to tariffs, all of these things are coming back. He says the mayor of LA is incompetent. And then literally immediately, I'm not joking you, after that follows up by saying that 2 years ago, 2 years, his words, they were in LA and they got all of the permits done to release the water and start building the buildings 2 years ago. That would be 2023, that he was the one who did all of that when he was facing federal indictments 2 years ago. And also definitely not president, in case you forgot. He then says, in addition to the incompetent LA mayor, that the mayor of Seattle is a communist, and because of that, we might have to move games away from Seattle. And then he asked the FIFA president, can we do that? And the FIFA president's like, I guess safety is most important, but no, you can't. These games are already scheduled. Oh, and then he talks about that check you're going to get, you know, your $2,000, what he calls a tariff dividend check. He now says that lower income people might get that by the middle of next year, but it's probably going to be later than that. So if you're lower income, you're not going to get the $2,000 check that would allow you to buy the $1,400 ticket to the FIFA game in order to be able to attend this event. So for all of you poors out there, it's not going to be any benefit to you, and you won't be able to watch any FIFA games live, just so you know. He said food prices are down substantially, but they're going to go down even further very soon. You just wait and see. And then he says that all of Epstein's friends were Democrats and that he had nothing to do with that. And he just wants people to recognize all of the wonderful things he's done. So then he lists off the wonderful things he's done, in case you were curious. He says he reduced prices and raised affordability. Neither one of those things has happened. He says he ended 8 wars. It's not even one. He said he lowered energy prices. Energy across the board is not down, including gas prices, which is the only thing that he's actually referring to. And then he also said that he hates to see the deflection of this Epstein thing against all of his wonderful accomplishments. It really isn't a big deal, even though all these Democrats supposedly spent all this time with him. And he, of course, brings up Larry Summers and Bill Clinton, says they spent all their time with him and that he didn't spend his time with Epstein. He called the Epstein thing the Russia hoax for the Democrats. And then he says that no matter how much information we give, it's never going to be enough. We gave all the files on MLK. It wasn't enough. Gave all the files on JFK. It wasn't enough. And we've given 50,000 documents here and it wasn't enough. I mean, I don't know. Maybe if he blows Bubba, he can find some more documents to hand out. He will also claim that all Democrats are friends with Jeffrey Epstein. Literally his words, every Democrat is a friend of Jeffrey Epstein's. He then says that he would be more than willing to bomb Mexico to stop drugs. He then says that he would be proud to bomb Colombia to stop drugs from Colombia, although he says he's not saying that he would do that, just that he would be proud to do that. And then he won't answer whether or not he's willing to wait for Mexico's permission before he starts bombing them, which of course would be an act of war from the president of peace. And finally, he says hundreds of thousands of people a year die from drug overdoses, which his own cabinet members refuse to say because they don't want to go to jail for that one. And finally, he says he knows the address of every drug lord in the world, all of them. He doesn't do anything about that, but he knows all of their addresses. 10%ers over 9 minutes. Thank you for sticking around. I'm glad I'm able to provide you this information on a near daily basis. Let's go ahead and tag Caroline again in this and see if she has any response to what was being said by him, or maybe she'll just respond to it in her next press conference, which I will also cover. And I will also at that point ask you to tag her in that, because that's going to be me ripping her apart instead of her boss. It's too easy to rip her boss apart. It's much more fun to rip Caroline apart. And I'd love for her to be tagged in that. But we have this one for today, so tag her if you will. I appreciate it.